Yeah, the stream should start now, Chair.
Is it live?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Right, thank you very much, Mark. Welcome to the Planning Committee meeting of the Vale of Glamorgan on Thursday, the 9th of October 2025 at 4 p.m. I have a little bit of housekeeping to go through before we start, as usual. May I remind everyone present that this hybrid meeting of the Planning Committee is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand in person if sat in the chamber, or use the remote raise hand function if a participant, use the remote raise hand function. If a participant raises their hand via the remote function and is not subsequently invited to speak by the chair, please could they turn their camera on to indicate or place a message in the chat function. When invited to address by myself, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. If this is not possible for any reason, please bring this to my attention or to that of the Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and or to grab the attention of myself or the Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they're addressing the committee, they should let me or the Democratic Officer know. So please can I welcome all committee and non-committee elected members, our officers, public speakers, residents, and also anyone watching the live meeting broadcast. We have a number of late reps, which I hope members of the committee have had the opportunity to look at, the matters arising that have been sent to us. And we have a number of speakers this afternoon, but we'll get to them in due course. Before we start the meeting proper, some of you may have been wondering why application 2024-00959 is /full. The Birth 31 application that we considered last time hasn't come to this. It will come to a future meeting as officers are in discussion with applicants. Ian, would you like to add anything to that?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just briefly to add that since the last meeting, the agent has submitted to us an amended dust management plan. So we're currently in the process of engaging with consultees and shared regulatory services and Natural Resources Wales in relation to that. That's the normal and proper process that we would do with an amended document. Obviously, we appreciate the concerns that members expressed at committee last time, but nevertheless, we still need to consider the information, and it is the applicant's prerogative to submit that document to try and overcome that. So we're assessing that at the moment, and as soon as possible, as soon as we have a perspective and a view on the impact of those changes, we'll be bringing it back to committee, sharing the nature of those changes in detail with members, and members can consider whether they feel that deals with the concerns previously raised or whether those concerns remain. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ian. Moving on to the meeting proper, can we start with apologies for absence, please?
Yeah, just to let you know, committee know, Chair, Councillors Cope, Councillor Dr Johnson and Councillor Stallard have forwarded apologies.
Councillor Bruce, you have your hand up.
Apologies for Janice Charles as well, please.
Councillor Charles, thank you.
Let's go put the hand down.
Yeah, put your hand down then, Gillian. Minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of September. Can we note those?
And I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, receive declarations of interest and the nature of such interests under the Council's Code of Conduct. Mark.
Yeah, I'd seek to advise from the monitoring officer regarding 2025-00493. Having seeked that advice, I stay in the room as I do not have a personal prejudicial interest.
Thank you for that. Any other declarations of interest? I see no hands. Right, on to the reports. Agenda item 4, building regulations, applications and other building control matters determined by the director under delegated powers. These are for noting.
Yeah, and I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Agenda item 5, planning applications determined by the director under delegated powers. Again, these are for noting.
And I'm happy to second that as well.
Okie doke. Agenda item 6, appeals. I believe, Liam, you're online. You're going to take these. We can't hear you, Liam. I think you're muted.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the appeals report begins on page 23. You can see there's one which was an invalid appeal. So the appellant was turned away by PEDU. So effectively their application for appeal, where their appeal wasn't made in time. And then the other decision then running through pages 23 and 24 of your papers, that was an application of residential property proposal to repair a garage and fit that out as amenity space and a guest bedroom. That one was allowed on appeal. So you can see some of the planning issues there in terms of the relationship of the property being ancillary or incidental to the dwelling in terms of the flat. So the inspector has allowed that one. So there's only those two appeal decisions. It impacts slightly on the statistics, but since this report's been published, I know there are a couple of dismissed appeals as well since that time. So, so the reports were noted really. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Liam.
I move that we note those appeals.
Thank you very much. That's seconded by me, if nobody else. Moving on to agenda item 7, then trees, the delegated list. Again, these are for noting.
Move that I second that.
Moved and seconded. All right then, we come on to the planning applications that we have before us. We have four before us today, starting with 2024/01020 full land east of Trioes. I think, Ian, you're presenting.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Liz, you okay to share the slides? Thanks. There's only a few for this one. Thank you, Chair. This relates to planning application 2024/01020/FUL, which proposes a new solar farm on just over 17 hectares of agricultural fields to the east of Trioes. Just under 12 hectares are subject to the operational development, which would give capacity for up to 9.9 megawatts of energy for a period of 40 years. Members may note that's just under the threshold where the development would have been referred to PEDU as a development of national significance. The development would sit adjacent to an existing smaller solar farm that was approved in 2015. Members may be able to pick that up on the image being shared. It's the field parcel just to the south of the access track, just to the sort of west of the bulk of the allocation, so you can get a feel for the size of that versus the size of the development proposed here. The banks of panels would be approximately 2.7 metres high. I think, Liz, they are shown on a plan, a couple after this one. There you go. It's a fairly typical array of panels, and the plan just before that shows the arrangement within the 4 field parcels. Access to the site would be at the eastern edge of the village, as shown on page 53 of the officer's report, which is the same access point from which the existing solar farm is accessed, and indeed the point at which it was accessed during the construction of that development. This route involves construction HGVs travelling from the A473 and via the lanes to the north of Trioes and the Waterton Industrial Estate. This would minimise vehicles coming through the village. A construction traffic management plan condition is recommended, and the construction period is estimated to average 14 two-way trips per day over a 12-month period. The Council's highways team are satisfied with the proposals in terms of access and traffic, subject to those conditions. The site is located in the Upper and Lower Thor Valley Special Landscape Area, and the report sets out a comprehensive landscape assessment, acknowledging that there would be visual impacts. These can rarely be escaped in totality with a development like this. These impacts would be softened over time by the comprehensive planting proposed, but in any case, the harm is considered to be limited and outweighed decisively by the benefits associated with the renewable energy generation. As noted in the officer's report, Welsh Government have set out ambitious renewables targets for 2035, and schemes such as this will be key to meeting these targets and tackling climate change. The local and national policy context is supportive, and it is considered that there are no objections or identified harm that outweighs those significant benefits. The report goes into some detail on a number of other issues, including agricultural land quality, ecological mitigation and enhancement, glint and glare, and heritage assets. And in particular, members may have noted that there was concern raised by the Conservation Officer in respect of the impact on the setting of some heritage assets. But again, as reasoned in the report, it is considered that this harm does not warrant the refusal of the application, and the significant energy generation benefits justify the recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. As indicated earlier, we do have some speakers this evening. The first being Ms. Hannah Mawson, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant. Ms. Mawson, you have 3 minutes from the time you start.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicant. We welcome the officer's recommendation to grant planning permission. As confirmed by the officer, the very clear assessment, the proposal complies with the development plan taken as a whole, and there are not any material considerations which indicate otherwise. When the planning balance is applied, all the harms that have been identified are clearly outweighed by the substantial benefits in supporting Wales's international commitments and the target to generate 70% of consumed electricity from renewable means by 2030 and 100% by 2035. Against these targets, it is estimated that Welsh renewable electricity generation is equivalent to 53% of Wales's current electricity consumption and 27% of Wales's estimated 2035 electricity demand. The planning application before you, a solar proposal, will power the equivalent of 2,600 homes each year and displace around 3,800 tonnes of CO2 per year, making a valuable contribution towards the targets, which is to be afforded significant weight. Although not mentioned in the committee report, there are associated economic benefits arising from the proposal, which include 280 temporary jobs, resulting in gross value added of up to 17.2 million, providing significant contributions to the wider local economy. Your officer's clear advice is that none of the scheme's impacts taken either individually or cumulatively would be so significant to justify a refusal of planning permission. The site is partially located within a defined local area for solar energy, whereby proposals of up to 50 megawatt will be permitted, providing criteria is met. The local development plan acknowledges the search area is within the Upper and Lower Thor Valley Special Landscape Area, demonstrating that development within this designation can be acceptable. Further, there is an existing solar farm, again demonstrating suitability of this type of proposal. It is agreed that whilst a solar farm by its very nature would alter the immediate character of the land, views from the majority of viewpoints would be considerably screened, and the impacts that are very limited and highly localised are proposed to be mitigated. It is therefore acceptable and policy compliant. Whilst the officer considers there is policy tension in relation to heritage due to slight harm which is temporary arising from the proposal being visible as a minor part of the wider view from local assets, special regard has been afforded to this, and the strong presumption in favour of renewable energy production weighs significantly in favour of development and outweighs the low magnitude impacts. Further, there are no unacceptable impacts on highway safety, residential amenity, agricultural land, ecology, green infrastructure, potential glare and archaeological resources. This includes when taking into account impacts from the existing solar farm neighbouring the site. Although not a material consideration for the planning balance, discussions regarding community benefits will progress with the Community Council subject to planning permission being granted today. To conclude, this scheme has an available grid connection that will enable the exporting of energy well in advance of 2030 and meets national and local policy. On this basis, I commend the officer's recommendation that planning permission should be granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mawson. Do we have any members of the committee who wish to wish to raise points of clarification. Councillor Cave, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Hannah. You very briefly touched on the community benefit, which you said was, which has been mentioned in the report, which you say is going to be a voluntary arrangement with the community council. It also says in the report that obviously that the community council had 42 objections, but they did not object themselves. And obviously, I do note that at every one of the community council meetings, the chair has had to declare an interest because she is a relative of the person that owns the farm. So I'm just concerned that maybe we should, as the committee, be thinking a bit more about this community benefit, because there will be a lot of upheaval in this very small village, and they've already had previous upheaval because of the previous solar farm, so they already know what it's going to be like, and they're not looking forward to it very much at all. So I'm just wondering why it wasn't agreed beforehand, and why it has to be done with the community council, because in my opinion, there's a really easy fix here. You can generate.
Councillor Cave, I think your question is what the community benefits are and why that hasn't been done beforehand. This isn't the time for
I'm
your
happy not to say
contribution.
more, Chair.
Later.
So, Ms Mawson, you've heard the question.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so we have identified that there will be community benefit. That's something that we extended to the Community Council. We extended an invitation to discuss this, but they didn't follow it back up with us. But it's very much still on the table, and the first step towards obviously agreeing that will be for planning permission to be granted. Obviously, it's not a material consideration as part of the planning decision here today, but it is something that the applicant is looking to take forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cave, is this a legacy hand or do you have your hand up again? It was a legacy hand, thank you. Are there any other members of the committee who have any other points of clarification for Ms Mawson? I see no hands. In that case, thank you, Ms Mawson. I'll go back to Liam for any observations you may have on the discussions on the points so far. Ian, I meant, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. No, I've got nothing further to add at this stage.
Thank you. In that case, I open the meeting to members for their considerations and any points they may want to raise or questions that they may have. Councillor Cave.
Thank you, Chair. I'm most grateful for you choosing to go to me first as the ward member for Tros. I do have a number of questions, and I'll pick up from where I just left off. I'd like to say that there's a very clear community benefit that may possibly be able to come out of this application, and that might be some free electricity for the school, because I think it would, in previous negotiations that have taken place on the old solar farm, I understand that that was a recommendation, although it never actually got off the ground. So that would be one of the things that I would be hoping the community could benefit from in way of an offset of the disruption that's going to take place here. Now, quite frankly, I am concerned about the loss of the farmland, as I am at every every planning meeting when we have a potential loss of farmland for housing or whatever. So I am going to say that I think the only reason that we're really accepting or officers are asking us to accept this application today is because of Welsh Government's recommendation to try and achieve net zero. So that's the driving force behind this. I do recognise that it has been placed into the local development plan as a potential area. I do think the fact that it does sit close by an existing solar farm could have been one of the reasons that we could have called it into Pedu, because it now, if you combine the two together, it would actually have to have been called in if it had come forward all in one go. So I'm just going to say that I do think the loss of farmland is substantial. I do think the a disruption to the village will be great. I don't actually believe that the policy on page 39, the policy 4 and 5, will actually stand up for this application, because I don't think there will be any supporting benefits for the community or for the rural economy. I really don't. I think the opposite. I think there'll be loss of farm jobs, because it will no longer be farmland. And I think the 280 temporary jobs will also not go to the people within the village. So I don't think policy 4 and 5 stand. Ian might have something very different to say about that. I think we're finding our officers are supporting this because of policy 17 about our rush for net zero. I do think we should take our conservation officers' comments very seriously, because of the loss and damage that could or harm that could possibly come to this valuable heritage site. So I won't say any more than that, other than to say, I was surprised that we had 42 comments to the Community Council, but they deemed it not necessary to say anything. Although obviously not all those comments were negative, a great deal of them were.
Thank you, Councillor Cave. I believe the next hand up was Councillor Hodges.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just briefly, on reading the application in the first place, there was one thing that sort of gently surprised me. I'm just wondering, just trying to get a bit of clarity, really. The scheme says it's a 40-year scheme. I seem to remember, perhaps incorrectly, that they tended to be 25 years before. Is it the technology is better, or what's changed?
I don't know the answer. We'll hopefully get that when Ian comes back in. But we have one more hand up.
I've got a question to ask as well.
We've got one more hand up, Councillor Ernest.
Yes, Chairman. I don't know the site particularly well. It's several years since I last visited Troyes, but it's a very fine small village, and I know the residents who live there value the area in which they live. And this development is sited just 450 metres to the west. So anybody who's a runner would do that within, a couple of minutes at the outside if they're a fast runner. So it's bound to impact on the village in a major way. And I, like Councillor Cave, are concerned that the comments of our conservation officer, our heritage officer rather, have not been taken into account in the same way. It seems to me that solar farms are all for the good of the developer. They meet Welsh Office objectives, but they certainly most of the time don't meet the objectives or needs of the people who will have the farm alongside them. So I do have a number of misgivings on this, and I happily support what Councillor Cave said a moment or two ago. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Councillor Wilson, you've indicated you want to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of what the Conservation Officer says, and I think if you read page 48, it mentions the word slight harm, and I think we've got to take that in perspective. Slight means very, very minor, very marginal. The other point I was going to ask was a technical question, really, about these solar farms over time. And I just wondered, over time, do they reduce their effectiveness as a way of generating electricity?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Ian, can you respond to all those points?
Yes,
raised?
Chair, of course. So I'll take Councillor Cave's comments first. I can't really add a great deal on the community benefit. I think the point has been made about its kind of materiality to the planning decision. So, we would leave that to the developer to discuss with the community following the decision. Loss of farmland. So the development is not on best and most versatile agricultural land. We wouldn't view it as being lost in any case. Yes, 40 years is not an insignificant time period, but the land is perfectly farmable after, it's probably not a word, but farmable after the 40 years. where developments are proposed on best and most versatile agricultural land, that that is taken significantly into account, and there have been other decisions, not necessarily within this council area, but I think within Wales, where the minister has weighed very heavily on that issue, but that's not a prevalent issue in this case, so that's why we're not proposing to refuse the application for that reason. In terms of PEDU and the cumulative energy generating capacity, I would say that's about timing. Yes, we wouldn't be accepting an application right after another one where combined they make for more than 10 megawatts. We see similar things with housing, and people sometimes trying to avoid Section 106 and salami slice and that kind of thing. But the existing solar farm has been there for the best part of 10 years. So I don't think it's right that we should treat this in addition, in kind of compounded with that one in terms of the cumulative energy generation. So it stands alone as a development. It's not a DNS. I couldn't obviously specify where the jobs would come from. We couldn't hinge our determination on whether temporary jobs are for local people. Obviously, we would anticipate that there's no reason why that could not be the case, and would hope that would be the case. But it's not something which is so material that the planning outcome should rest on that. And then conservation area, yes, the comments have been taken very seriously. So, any harm to heritage assets, any harm to a conservation area has to be taken very seriously, and special attention has to be given to the desirability of preserving the character of those assets and those areas. It's just that very significant weight has been attributed to the benefits that I set out in my earlier presentation. Councillor Hodges is right. Typically, these were 25 years. In the past, my understanding is that the equipment, the panels, are more durable now, and they are capable of lasting 40 years. That also has the benefit of giving kind of greater certainty to landowners and the developers, about the costs of delivering and decommissioning the development. That it does stack up, and it's worth doing in the first place. I'd agree with Councillor Wilson relating to the level of harm. I'm not aware of whether the effectiveness decreases over time. I would say if that is the case, not significantly so, because they wouldn't be retained in situ for that length of time if they weren't remaining economically viable and generating energy in the required way. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. I noticed Councillor Gilligan appeared briefly on my screen. Did you have any points to raise, or Councillor Gilligan? You just flashed up again, Wendy. There you go.
Wendy Gilligan, trying to speak there.
Councillor Gilligan, can you just check you haven't turned your camera or microphone off? Right, Councillor Gilligan, if you're still having problems, it might be worth just leaving the meeting temporarily and rejoining. We'll just give you a minute to do that, and obviously before we proceed. Hi, Councillor Gilligan. If you've rejoined, can you just retry again now to see if you can speak and be seen?
Hello, I don't know whether you can hear or see me, but I'm having problems with the Wi-Fi this evening. So
okay,
I didn't want to speak. I was just rejoining the meeting.
Yeah, no, it's fine. We can hear you now anyway, Councillor Gilligan. So that's fine.
Thank you, Wendy. We can hear you. We can't actually see you, but that's at least we can hear you. Are there any other members of the committee wanting to raise any points on this? Councillor Wilson.
I'd like to move officers' recommendations.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Councillor Williams, I assume that was another second, as you just gone off again. There does seem to be some dissent, so perhaps we should take this to the vote. Sorry, Mark. Yeah. So we'll vote. If you're for officers' recommendations, it'll be plus.
Right.
Or,
Councillor Perry's having some technical difficulties as well. That's why your colleague has gone off.
right.
Okay. You could vote another way if you wanted to.
Well, has he heard all the debate?
I can't verify that until.
No.
I'll just check my colleague now and then we'll do the voting.
Right. Apparently, Councillor Perry's been having difficulties connecting as well, so we'll just wait a moment to see what's going on with that. Yeah. Right, in that case, it looks like Councillor Perry's going to make his way to the chamber. So he's missed a lot of the discussion as well, apparently, so he won't be able to vote anyway. So can we set the vote up and get it going, please? So the vote is whether or not you are in favour of officer recommendations, for or against.
The voting should start now, Chair.
Voting's live. All votes appear to be in. And it's 9-4, 3 against, so that's clearly carried. Thank you. Only if I put my microphone on. We move on. Next one is application 2025/00238 FUL 8 Paget Road, Barry. This is the third application from the last meeting for us to consider the conditions and so forth that are suggested by officers. And I think, Ian, you're taking this one as well.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's right. So as you've set out, this is the item which members will recall from last month. It relates to the conversion of the upper floors and external alterations to Mary Friars Building at 8 and 9 Paget Road on Barry Island. Members will recall this is an application to amend a previous approval, and the key issue related to the impact of the balconies on the front elevation. When this was discussed at committee last month, there was a vote to defer the application for officers to return with a schedule of conditions in order to approve the application. And members will note that schedule of conditions is set out at the end of the report. The report is presented in the same way that the previous report was in terms of how it reasoned the issues. I mean, unavoidably that remains the officers' views on it, but that's notwithstanding a clear understanding of members' perspective on that issue. What I would just emphasise is that because the report sets out those officer concerns and then sets out the reasons, just for the avoidance of any doubt, I would just recommend that if a member is minded to move the approval of the application, that is worded as move the approval of the application subject to the conditions in the report, rather than move the recommendation, if that's clear. Thank you, Chair.
Do any members of the committee have any questions on this item? Councillor Hodges.
Let's make sure I get the wording right. Yes, I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. Move the approval of the recommendation with the conditions thereby attached.
And I'm happy to second Councillor Hodges' suggestion as well.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Payne, you have your hand up. Had your hand up. Helen, were you seconding?
think I said.
Yeah, I'm seconding.
No comments, right. Are there any other members of the committee wanting to speak on this, or?
Councillor Perry.
No, he was just testing.
He's just testing.
No. In that case, I see no hands up. I see no opposition to the motion. Therefore, that is now carried with the new conditions and so forth. Thank you for that one. Moving on, we come to
Councillor Perry.
Councillor Perry, sorry.
Yeah. Well, my camera's over there. Right, just so everyone's aware, the reason why I am here is because my laptop requires a new key on the keyboard, and the ITC department have not got a card, so they can't pay for the repair. I could do it myself in about 20 minutes. That's a simple repair, but we don't have a card. So the loan laptop doesn't work. This doesn't work, so I've had to travel all the way in here. And the £26 million road, no one's thought about the extra traffic at Waycott Cross.
Councillor Perry,
So that's why I'm a bit late.
We've noticed that you've come in. I don't think any of the rest of it is for this committee.
Well,
It's
no,
something
but
perhaps you should take
that's
up with
the reason.
IT.
Well, yes,
Thank
but
you.
I just want to explain why I'm late.
No, you're talking over me. Stop. Thank you.
I was elected to represent people.
Sorry,
that's why I'm late.
Councillor Perry, you have
you're
been
out of
told.
order.
Excuse me,
Please stop.
Could you stop,
Councillor
please,
Wilson,
Councillor Perry?
Councillor Wilson, you are speaking to me, not the chair.
Yes.
And you
Thank
should address the
Councillor
chair.
Perry, I have already pointed that out to Councillor Wilson. Will you now stop? Thank you. Good Lord.
Very friendly, thank you. Oh, yes, of course.
Right. We'll come back to the matter in hand, which is the Sully to Cosmos an active travel route. We have two speakers on this, one member of the public and the local member. But can you please introduce the matter, Liam?
Thank you, Chair. Can we get the slides up, please? Okay, so this application seeks full planning permission for the construction of a shared pedestrian and cycle route, an active travel route linking the village of Sully to Cosmoston. If we go on to the next slide, this route will follow existing footways and a disused railway line with associated works including earthworks, landscaping, lighting, fencing and access infrastructure. So in terms of procedural matters first, members should note that the application site boundary is that of the red line on the site location plan before you. There are parts of the scheme which do fall outside of this red line, but have nonetheless been considered and commented on as part of this scheme, which you'll see throughout the documents. Members are advised that Section 75 of the Highway Act 1980 grants the Highway Authority the ability to vary relative widths of carriageways and any footway. Furthermore, Part 13 of the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development Order 95 allows for highway works within highway limits. So to that end, there are parts of the scheme, although shown on the application and documents, would be permitted development. So namely, that would be the areas at the start and end of the route. So if you look at the plan there, we've got the area in red would be the sort of on the sort of the lower portion would be the start of the route, which I'll come on to shortly, and then it ends up at the top there near Cosmoston. So other procedural matters in terms of environmental impact assessment regulations, officers have conducted an assessment of the scheme and any potential for environmental effects, and the local planning authorities adopted an opinion that the development is not EIA development, as it does not give rise to significant environmental effects by virtue of its nature, location or its design. A number of matters arising have been circulated for members. They give an update on some matters raised following the publication of the report. So in terms of the scheme, I'll just walk you through some slides I've put together. So as we say, if you go on to the next slide, we start first on South Road, Sully, on land opposite the Sports and Social Club. The plans there indicate the route. So the route is to be widened slightly along Winsford Road, on the sort of left-hand side there of your slide. to 2.5 metres to avoid removal of trees. And then it'll follow along South Road as opposed to Swanbridge Grove. So if you're looking at the plan, it starts there, Winsford Road, and then it'll come connecting into where it says B4267, the top plan sort of shows the limits of it. You'll note from the next slide, there's a photograph I've included. There were concerns raised about, well, why not carry the existing footway along the carry the new cycleway along the existing footway. But if you look in the background of the photograph there, you'll see there's a number of trees. So if you were to carry that footway, you'd need to increase the footway width. So it wouldn't be effective because you'd end up losing those trees. So I think the option was chosen there to carry along South Road and then to put that area of pavement back into grass, which is set out in your document. So that's the justification in that respect. So if we move on to the next slide, we'll just see where the path then routes up in a sort of northeast direction along the B4267 Lavenock Road, and this is where essentially the application site boundary begins. If we go on to the next slide, so you've got a group of dwellings near the vineyards, and if you see the red dotted line there, that marks the start of the application site along an old railway, disused railway entrance. So if we move on to the next photograph, we'll just have an indication. There we go. If you go back a slide just slightly, so you have a new two-gun crossing the road and then into the disused railway line. And that's where the application site begins along the old railway line. So the photographs are on the next slide, which we just had a view of. There we go. And you can see the nature of that land. So you're cutting in and then following that old railway embankment. So if we go on to the next slide, when the path gets to St Mary's Well Bay Road, it'll then continue northward, also northeastwards, but there will be an opportunity to join or come off at this point through the introduction of a new ramp, which will lead down to St Mary's Well Road. So that's set out in your drawings. So you can see from the photograph there, the old railway line along the top. So there'll be an access way then on to St Mary Well Road, so increasing active travel at that point as well. So if we move on to the next slide, it continues northwards along Cosmoston, notably that disused railway line. There are residential properties there. It backs onto the railway line. It's been set out in the report, and in terms of any impacts on those properties and the mitigation in terms of fencing proposed. If we move on to the next slide, you can see there's a number of slides, but I just thought it'd be good to get a picture of the route. So we go northwards then through the Cosmoston housing development, which members will recall had previously been considered and approved subject to a Section 106 agreement through that land there, and this would be integrated into that development. And then the next slide then, the path will connect to Cosmoston Drive, routing through the grassed corridor between Fulmer Close and Shearwater Close, then linking to an existing railway walk route that heads up to Brock Hill Rise. So you can see there that sort of green corridor, it's going to go through there and then joining into the top half where there's a radial route, which is indicated in yellow on your left plan. So that is the connection there. If we go on to the next slide then, so that just gives an overview, a sort of enlarged view of the plan. And then the photographs there on the right showing the sort of context. So the lower photograph shows the area concerned, and then the photograph at the top shows the footpath it connects into, crossing over the road there. So if we just move on to the next slide, in terms of design, the footway will be 4 metres wide along the railway and then a minimum of 3 metres wide on primary routes. There would be associated signage and markings, and materials would consist of a trail flex paving. An example image there included in some of the documents is enclosed on your slide. There'd be timber posts, fencing and galvanised steel fencing along the route. Some extracts there from the submissions, also indicating bollards, which would be put at the end of the railway line embankment area. So if we move on to the next slide, just gives us a sort of couple of cross sections. There's a number of cross sections in the submission, but these just give an indication of the general makeup of the path. So you can see the cross section there at the top with the railings alongside, low level bollard lighting as well, which would face inwards. And then we come on to the next slide. Yeah, so this is an extract from one of the submissions in the application in terms of trees and green infrastructure. So the scheme has been informed by green infrastructure assessment. It's taken account of the stepwise approach for biodiversity and green infrastructure. Essentially, the scheme will maintain the existing wildlife corridors, providing replacement of tree planting and new planting, in excess of 300 new trees to be marked out for native woodland planting, and features such as invertebrates, hotel, bird and bat boxes and habitat piles. Species-rich rain gardens are included, along with 153 metres of linear native hedgerow. So those extracts there, just discussing the woodland planting and the type of species. And if we come on to the next slide, then it sort of gives a sort of an overview of the type of species to be planted within those areas. We've got the native woodland, hedgerow and scrub areas. So that's just a general overview of the scheme in your papers. In terms of planning merits, starting with the principle of development, as members will be aware, the principle of development, the thrust of policy and guidance in Planning Policy Wales and Future Wales relates to the need to promote a shift to active travel. Section 3 of Planning Policy Wales states the planning system has a vital role to play in creating healthier places. Planning authorities must consider the impact of development on people's physical and mental health and well-being. This includes promoting walking and cycling, improving air quality and providing access to green spaces. Active travel should be embedded in planning decisions to support healthier lifestyles and reduce health inequalities. Development proposals should demonstrate how they contribute to creating environments that support physical activity. So in that context, the route is identified in the local development plan under policy MG16. If you come on to the next slide, I think there might be an overview of that policy. So policy MG16 and it identifies in the supporting text the National Cycle Network Route 88, and it's also supported by the Active Travel Wales Act 2013. So the proposal promotes sustainable transport and healthy lifestyles, and in that way is acceptable as a matter of principle. So if you note the wording of the LDP extract there, which sets a reference to that Route 88 and states that the Council has a long-standing commitment to develop the national cycle network within the Vale Glamorgan. So the report before you, and while it's not a material planning consideration per se, sets out that funding for this project has been obtained from the Welsh Government Core Active Travel Fund. Reference is made in the report to the site being within the Green Wedge. Policy MG18 refers. This is of relevance, however, the proposal will not prejudice the open nature of the land, given that the siting is along the existing disused railway line. Other considerations in your report, which go into them a little bit more detail, are your visual impact. The route has been sensitively designed to follow the existing infrastructure, as I mentioned there, across the disused railway line. And it won't prejudice, it'll essentially blend into the landscape in that setting. The materials used, such as trail effects paving and timber fencing, have been selected for their low visual impact. Lighting is proposed to be low level and directional to minimise spill, and compensatory planting with approximately 300 trees and new hedgerow. And rain gardens, as I mentioned, will integrate the scheme within that wider context. In terms of residential amenity, the route is generally well separated from residential properties. Where it runs close to dwellings, fencing and lighting have been designed to protect privacy. For example, 1.8 metre high fence is required along the boundary with barouche to mitigate any potential for overlooking at that point. And lighting bollards are low level and face away from sensitive receptors, so to face inwards to the path and not outwards. terms of ecology and biodiversity, an ecological impact assessment and dormouse survey have been submitted. The mitigation includes sensitive lighting, as I've already mentioned, the habitat creation and installation of bat and dormouse boxes. And the proposal has been subject to full consultation with NRW and the council's ecologist, who had no objections to raise, subject to conditions as set out in the report. Moving on then, in terms of trees, I did touch on it just now. So in terms of impacts of trees, the application includes a ground level tree assessment. This identifies a total of 16 individual trees, one group of trees, and the partial pruning of works to 11 tree groups. Exact numbers of those trees to be removed within the groups are not specified at this stage. However, their removal is due to the positioning of individual trees within the alignment of the proposed route, so the retention is not viable in those instances. Nevertheless, the tree survey has identified the majority of the trees proposed to be removed are category C trees, which have been subject to ash dieback. The scheme will provide circa 300 replacement trees, as mentioned, identified at a density of 0.5 trees or shrubs per square metre. So this would result in suitable mitigation for the trees to be lost and new hedgerow provision to be provided. Condition 8, set out in your papers, provides secures details of the number and nature of trees to be removed and will confirm the replacement tree planting there. In terms of other material planning considerations, highway safety, the Highway Authority has raised no objections. Safe crossings, signage and lighting are proposed, with those bollards I mentioned to prevent unauthorised vehicle access, and the route's considered safe and accessible for all users. Drainage and flooding, flood consequences assessment and drainage strategy have been submitted. Site lies in a flood zone A and is considered low risk. Sustainable drainage approval will be required under the SAB process. Archaeology and heritage, desk-based assessments been submitted. Mitigation will be secured by condition, and no objections have been raised by statutory consultee or the heritage officer. In terms of green infrastructure, statements has been provided, and as I mentioned, the proposal does follow a stepwise approach and will be expected to result in a net biodiversity gain with the various features that are proposed throughout. So to sum up, in conclusion, the proposal supports sustainable travel and public health and is wholly acceptable as a matter of principle. The planning merits of the scheme have been weighed up by your officers, and essentially any concerns addressed by suitable planning conditions. So the application therefore is recommended for approval. And I'll pass you back to the Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Liam. As I indicated earlier, we do have a member of the public wishing to speak on this, and also the local members. So if I may first invite Mr. Lyndon Arnold. Welcome, Mr. Arnold. If you press the button and start speaking, then your timing will start then. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to address you. I live adjacent to the proposed route at its northern end, where it meets Cosmoston Drive. I don't object to the scheme, but I'm asking you to consider 3 issues. Firstly, I'm concerned that the engineering works behind my house on the embankments will cause damage to those embankments on the east side, the housing very close to it, and work could adversely affect those houses, their structural integrity. And on the west side, if it's lowered, this will allow users of the route to peer into my garden and house and my neighbours, adversely affecting the amenity of our housing. Secondly, the amenity of the house will be adversely affected by the proposal for lights along the route. These will shine directly into my bedrooms at night and into my neighbours. So I'm asking if you could consider terminating them at the bridge south of my home. There are no lights on the route from Cosmoston Drive into Penarth, and I don't think there's anything other than superfluous here. Thirdly, I want to be sure that the environmental appraisal that has been commissioned looks at the piece of woodland behind my house. This area is badly overgrown, it's dangerous, and it's in need of maintenance. There's a tree currently overhanging the path, and it will need cutting back by the works. Now, this area is a haven for wildlife, as it is home to or used by owls, woodpeckers, squirrels, hedgehogs, magpies, bats, pheasants, foxes, firecrests and fireflies. So please could I ask again for you to reconsider that piece of land. Finally, as a fully trained town planner, I know I can't object on the grounds of the scheme not being financially viable. That's another issue for you. But you don't seem to be able to afford to maintain the footpath from my home up to Penarth or the cliff top. So I don't know whether you'll have enough funds for the maintenance of this huge scheme for the next 30 years. So can I please ask you to ensure that you do have the adequate finance? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arnold. Are there any points of clarification for Mr. Arnold, please?
Yes.
Councillor Wilson.
Okay, on your last point about the footpath, it really depends on, I suggest you contact your local member, and your local member, one of them is here today, to email either myself or Councillor Brooks, because it depends whether it's public rights of way or if it's highways. If it's highways, it's myself. I'm Councillor Mark Wilson. That's my cabinet role.
Yeah.
But equally, if it's not, I can then refer that on to Councillor Brooks, who has responsibility for public rights of way. But if you could email me, I'd be grateful.
That's to do with the finance.
Marnie, who's here today, or Councillor Gilligan, who's your other member.
Councillor Perry, is this a point of clarification?
Yeah, well, no, I thought we were restricted to questions, not giving advice to the resident.
It's a point of clarification. Thank you. It was a response to a point. It was a response to a point that Mr. Arnold raised. Are there any points of clarification, please? Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to know about, you were talking about the lights and the glare. Are these lights on like lampposts, or are they lights that are ground level? I just wondered to clarify that point, please.
Mr. Arnold, I mean, you've read the report, so you know that the lights, what the nature of the
I've
lights.
never seen the final planning application. I couldn't get onto the website. I'm going onto the consultation documents. These are low level on barriers about 2-3 foot high. But the footpath actually is above the level of my house by about 3 meters. So they'd be right into my bedroom windows.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any other points of clarification for Mr. Arnold? I see no hands. We have another speaker, Councillor Marnie, who is not a member of the committee, but is the local ward member, has indicated that he would wish to speak. Councillor Marnie, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Don't really know where to start on this one. I mean, I've just listened to a near 20-minute talk by Liam there outlining this scheme, which is to help pedestrianisation, people walking and cycling. What, you mean like the one that's exactly there right now, except a bit grander? There's already a cycling and walking provision up that road, except you won't be spending millions and millions of pounds, wasting millions and millions of pounds that's proposed here. You've heard the objections there by Mr. Arnold there. He's quite right. This is an area, I would never let a child go up there off grid, as it were, out of sight. We've already had to complain to the police about drug dealings along the current disused railway line, and the police have acknowledged that and told us that they've discovered stashes of drugs there that are then being dished out by drug dealers. I can already see it as a huge superhighway for those on the 20 and 40 mile an hour souped up e-bikes. So we've already got a bikeway and mixed pedestrian. I'm not normally in favour of mixing bikes and pedestrians, but in my 14 years there and all my time living in Surrey, I'm not aware of any incident that has occurred there between cyclists and pedestrians. That's not to say it hasn't. In fact, I've driven along the route from Barry today, a total of 14 miles there and back, and came across 3 cyclists, all of them using the road. You know full well, there's hardly any cyclists go along there. Some cyclists do use that route, but I would, in my estimation, at least minimum half just use the road anyway. There's no point having these things unless it's law that you have to use them. So you're proposing 2 parallel cycle and pedestrian routes within 20, 30, 40 yards of each other, both of them lit up. One of them I would consider to be dangerous to travel along for public safety. But anyway, getting to the point, my main concern is from the vineyards onwards. When the route comes back down towards Sully, there's supposed to be a light-controlled crossing, fine. Pedestrians and cyclists go along there now. But you're then proposing to rip up every grass verge along that road into the entrance of Sully, rip up the 2 beautiful verges in Sully that have existed there before I moved to Sully 55 years ago. We've just seen a picture of one of them where you said you don't want to go widen it anymore because you might lose some trees, and across a road that serves, I think, 6 to 7 houses. It then goes on to and meets the narrow pavement network of Sully, and the response from the planners is, oh, we'll have to cross the road there to rejoin South Road. So basically, you're proposing to rip up every bit of green from the vineyards into Sully, rip up the 2 lovely verges, the approach to the village, and when any cyclists then have to cross the road at the entrance to Sully Sports to rejoin the main road anyway. You're proposing to do that, and they'll just join the main road several hundred yards after they would coming down from the railway, old railway line anyway. Plus spend a couple of £1 million doing it. It's absolute madness. How dare you? This is a committee which consistently concretes over and gives planning approval over hectare after hectare after hectare of green land. And yet you're proposing the vandalism of the green verges coming into Sully. We've had the famous mention, the famous rain gardens, like the hanging gardens of Babylon. No, they're not. They're a foot-wide weed mess everywhere they're installed. If you need evidence of that, you can go down to Hayes Road, which again I've just passed today, at the new entrance into the BP works there, and the rain gardens there, 2-foot-high stretches of weeds. Actually, to join the further 150 yards of weeds, which are unofficial rain gardens, where the Vale can't even keep their own pavements weed-free. So they're not tended, beautiful rain gardens. It's another made-up phrase by planners and whatever. We've heard mitigation. It's a favourite word of Vale planners and developers. It's not mitigation if you're ripping up green areas and planting a few trees and a bush elsewhere. That's not mitigation, that's transfer. We've seen objection after objection by experts in the planning papers, met with mitigation. It's a magic word. So why on earth would you spend millions of pounds duplicating in parallel with a walking and cycling route that's already there, and then grub up the last bit of green into Sully? From the vineyards onwards into Sully, of course, you've got at least 9 lampposts and various other road signs.
Please, Councillor Marnie, you've had your 5 minutes.
All right. You could have given us a bit of a warning, 30 seconds in, but thank you anyway. I wonder if any questions could be addressed to me rather than just the planner. Another fault of our planning system. My comments could be rubbished without reply.
Any questions
thank you. I've got it.
based on what you said will be addressed to you. Are there any points of clarification? I see Councillor Payne, you have your hand up first. I know.
No point of clarification, Chair. I just wanted to comment.
No, not at this time. Councillor Payne, that will be after points of clarification. Councillor Perry, was that a point of clarification?
Yeah, it was for Kevin, because he's obviously preferring the. I've got two points. The first one is the directness of the route to destinations like the Penarth Railway Station and Penarth Town Centre from Sully. He says that they are parallel routes, but isn't one more direct than the other, Kevin?
There's very little in it, but you're ignoring my bit about from the vineyards into Sully. If you want to waste millions of pounds on this, that's fine. I don't mind to go along the railway route, although I do clarify that, but my earlier concerns from Mr. Arnold, which I agree with, and what I've mentioned there. But certainly from the vineyard to Sully, it doesn't make any difference, does it? If we keep with what's there and is coping.
Okay, and if I ask the second point of clarification, Swanbridge Grove, obviously it does run parallel to what is being proposed to be put across the grass verge in front of Swanbridge Grove. Would you think that Swanbridge Grove, rather than widen the footpath, you could actually have what the Dutch called a bicycle street along Swanbridge Grove rather than widening the existing footway, Kevin?
Well, another made-up term, bicycle street, that's a new one on me. Good. No, cars can come along there, cars park there, cars can come along there, bikes can traverse with the cars, and there's a pavement there. I mean, what more do you want there? The bikes can go on. It's already a designated bike path. You haven't acknowledged that, have you? You don't have to do anything there. I've just said, I've spent 14 miles today and come across 3 cyclists, all of them using the road, which is my experience anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Payne, you now have your hand up again. Is this now another point of clarification?
No.
And put your
Not
hand
clarification,
down.
same hand, waiting to speak.
Councillor Cave, your hand is up. Is this a point of clarification?
I hope so, Chair. I hope you'll consider it a point of clarification. I see that Councillor Marnie, like a lot of us, is very passionate about his local area. Can I ask, he's obviously taken the time today to look at the route and see how many cyclists are using it. And he is our ears and eyes because, you know, he lives in the area and he knows the area. So has he had many comments from members of the public in regards to this proposal? And have they particularly mentioned the cost to the taxpayer? Because it might not be council tax money, you know, the Vale Glamorgan council tax money, but have they particularly questioned the use of the money from Welsh Government?
Councillor Cave, I will allow it, but it isn't strictly speaking a point of clarification. Points of clarification should be based entirely on what the Speaker has said, not on other matters. But Councillor Marnie, you may respond if you wish.
Thank you for that. I should point out I was brought up in the area. Today obviously isn't the only time I've tried to traverse that route. I do just about every day or most days or many days if you like. I know every square inch of that route, any problems or whatever. As regards the public, like many things, the public don't really pick up in a lot of them, but those who have, to a person, has said how much, and we're still not sure of the cost. It's been quoted to me as £4.5 million. I think it's been referred to as a lot more than that in other media outlets. Maybe that can be clarified anyway. But my point is, planners and these eco-loons are quite happy to waste as much of our taxpayers' money as possible. It wouldn't really matter if it was £500,000 or 30 million, if you like, for a thing where there's already a route. I can't repeat that enough. And as I say, the sheer hypocrisy of people who quote climate emergency after this, declare climate emergency there, and want to then rip up every last bit of green that's remaining after they've already cemented over hectares and hectares of green farmland anyway. So in answer to your question, just to summarise that, every single person I've spoke to in the Sully area is furious about the ripping up of the entrance to our village, the green entrance to our village, and every single one who's referred to the cost has just, their eyes have just shot skywards, quite frankly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Perry, you have your hand up again. Is this a point of clarification?
It is a clarification.
Be brief, please.
Kevin Marnie has said that he's seen people cycling the route, some on the path, some actually on the road. I'm just wondering if Kevin's actually ridden the route himself to experience what those people are experiencing and to understand why some are on the road and what problems and issues there might be with the existing route.
I have over the years cycled that route and walked that route.
Thank you very much. Right, there being no other points of clarification, thank you for your time, Councillor Marnie. We'll come back to Liam, I think, for your response to the comments that have been raised so far. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's various points there. I mean, I referred to the matters arising first, just as a starting point. There were obviously points raised by residents there in terms of the aspect which Councillor Marnie has touched on in terms of the greenery along that part of the start of the route. But as I reflected in my first comments, the planning application and the red line boundary does not actually include that area of land. So that area of land is outside of the application site boundary. This relates to more matters outside of the application, which the council, as landowner and highway authority, can carry out works within that area. And that matter, as I reflected on, yes, there was a removal of some green area, but there was also putting the green area back where the path is currently, and there was justification there around why that particular route was chosen. Coming on to the comments from the resident who spoke, obviously there are issues there raised in terms of engineering matters, comments about users potentially being able to look into the garden, light shining in, and the area of woodland behind, and then matters of funding. So dealing first the engineering matters, obviously we deal with the application before us, which includes the relevant information from a planning perspective. Obviously, the council will be required to follow their own best practice in terms of actually engineering the solution on site. We will obviously control it from a planning perspective, but there will be matters which, as a council and landowner, we will need to sort of administer on site. In terms of potential users of the path being able to look into the resident's garden, as I mentioned earlier, there are areas where fencing can be provided, and they are actually provided as referenced in the report on certain areas along the route to prevent overlooking. In terms of lighting, the lighting is low level lighting, which is quite common for sort of active travel routes, and it wouldn't be the lighting that would shine directly into a property. So whether that's existing street lighting was being referenced to, I'm not too clear. In terms of ecology, there's been extensive ecology reports, as I've referred to in the application. So that has been considered in full by ecologists and NRW. There's no objections there. Just another issue to touch on, which I didn't quite elaborate on in my opening discussion, was around the matters arising. So we did have a letter submitted to us by Barry Friends of the Earth, which raised concerns around the matter of EIA screening. So just to flag that again, really. When considering the application, we didn't regard the application as being EIA development, which is normally reserved for applications of significance where they will provide for significant effects from the development on the surroundings, whether that be by visual impact or other impacts ecologically, for example. When screening a development, normally you look at either Schedule 1 or Schedule 2. Schedule 1 and 2 have different categories of development. The category that's made reference to by the writer or of the letter attached to the matters rising refers to new roads. Now, officers didn't consider this to be a road in the full sense of it, which is why it wasn't screened at the start of the process. However, having considered it in full, we have provided a screening report which sets that out in some detail, which is in your papers. So we've considered that whether you regard it as a road or pathway, the impacts arising are their local impacts, and they would not give rise to matters of significance or harm to a degree that would require an EIA. So just to flag that for members there. If I haven't touched on anything, I need to come back, Chair. Please let me know.
Thank you, Liam. There was one other thing that Mr. Arnold raised, which was the damage to the embankment and the potential for it sliding towards his home. Liam?
Yeah. I mean, as I say, damage wouldn't necessarily be general planning consideration. As I touched on earlier, we wouldn't necessarily, as a planning authority, be considering damage, which would be a private matter between parties.
No. I don't think he was talking about damage to his home. He was talking about damage to the embankment caused by the weight and changes that are being made to the embankment, which might then cause the embankment to be damaged.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just checking through the schedule of conditions, Chair. Yeah, I don't think there's anything specific in there. I mean, we could ask for further details, engineering details of that area, if members wanted to add a condition to that effect. As I say, you wouldn't ordinarily impose it, but if members feel it necessary, we could ask for additional engineering details of that area to be provided.
Yeah, thank you, Liam. Ian, you wanted to comment on that?
Not much to add. Yeah, something like that relating to, fundamentally how something is constructed. I don't think there's any evidence before us to say that it is going to be a problem. The vast majority of developments we approve, we don't require, structural or engineering details because it's governed by other means. I'd agree with what Liam says. It's not something we would normally add, but if members felt it was necessary, I'm sure the applicant would be able to accommodate it.
Thank you for that. And again, with Mr. Arnold's concern about overlooking and so on, and we were talking about screening and providing screening, that would benefit Mr. Arnold as well by screening any lighting that was in proximity to his property.
Yeah, I think officers are of the view that the nature, height, and intensity of the lighting is not such that it should have significant amenity impact. So that's the officer's
It's overlooking as well because it's high and his house is there.
Sure. Sorry, I was responding to your point regarding lighting. Again, I think the officers are of the view that given the nature of the route, transient kind of passing of it's not a significant impact. So it obviously members feel differently. We can consider that, but we don't feel there's a significant impact in that regard.
Thank you for that. Right, we have a number of hands up. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things is the consideration for the glare from the light. So that, for me, would be a consideration in terms of the height of the lighting. So for me, that would be a consideration. But overall, I'm really, really happy that my dog's barking. He's joining in. Sorry. So that we've got a safe travel route. So as somebody who lived in Surrey and cycled that route on that small path, it is really difficult to pass with a pedestrian or another cycle user. It is well used, particularly at the weekends. It's well used. I've used it lots of times. So I'm delighted that there is another safe travel route because it was problematic getting through Surrey, particularly if you've got a child in tow. So I'm delighted that now there'll be a safe travel route. So I don't have any issue with it and I welcome it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Avia, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Liam, can I just ask, how these routes benefit people in motorised, vehicles like mobility scooters? And it's going to benefit them, I know. I mean, they're allowed to go on. I'm not non-cyclist. And also, parents, people with prams and toddlers, is that going to keep them safer? Can you just explain the benefits of that, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Avia. We have more hands before we come to that, though. Councillor Ernest.
Chairman, have you opened this up to general debate yet?
Yeah. That's where we're at now, yes.
Right, well, for general debate, do you want me to take my turn now? Or...
Yes, please.
Right, okay, thank you. Chairman, I've had a very short time to put my comments together for reason that Need and Trouble Committee today. But this scheme has been over 5 years in the making. I remember even before I was re-elected onto the council way back in 2022, going to an exhibition in Surrey to see the layout for this scheme. So it's got legs, it's got history. But first of all, I think there's a basic principle here. This was, as members have heard, a railway line. It wasn't just a railway line. It connected Cardiff to Penarth and Penarth to Cadoxton and Barry. And it carried many thousands of passengers on rail carriages. And no doubt it carried a very large amount of goods traffic as well. We know that the Surrey area has expanded considerably. And with the addition of 576 new houses in this wonderful social scheme at Cosmiston that I was told about last week, there are going to be many, many people without much in the way of transport. They would have welcomed a railway line being reinstated, and this is the point I'm making. And the Cardiff Metro system, I believe, did have, or certainly has, plans somewhere for the existing line down to Penarth to be reinstated back towards Surrey. How much that is pie in the sky or not, I'm not competent to judge on. Chairman, the Plymouth Ward members are down. I see at the bottom of page 88 of the report, Plymouth Ward members were consulted. Frankly, I don't recall myself and Councillor Rhys-Thomas being consulted. Maybe they're referring to the two members who lost their seats at the last election, who possibly did comment, and I welcome that, but they're no longer with us. So whatever they said may be slightly irrelevant. Chairman, we've got a new school going in there, a new, as we all know, it's in the process of being constructed. It's had some problems when the contractors went bust. It's been taken up now by a new company and the scheme is going ahead. The traffic on the B4267 between Surrey and Penarth is tremendous. There are already long queues coming into Penarth during the morning rush, and you'll see the reverse and the evening rush when they're going back towards Barry. Now, had the rail line been there still, or were it to be reinstated, quite a bit of that traffic could have been ameliorated. But here we are, we have a cycle track. We also have a set of traffic lights that are going to be put in the middle of the road. You'll come along Lavenock Road, peacefully green area, come up over the rise with hedges either side, and suddenly, stop. There's a set of traffic lights in the middle of the country. And this is where the cyclist is going to be crossing the road. I perceive that as being very dangerous. If these lights were in the middle of a village, in the middle of Surrey, or I don't know, towards Penarth, maybe. But on the middle of a road with a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit on it, I think it's not a very good idea and could well prove problematical. My suggestion for that was to build a bridge over the top, a simple bridge. It wouldn't help the Plymouth Ward members at all. We are the next ward to Surrey, and I hear the comments of the local members for the ward, or the local member for the ward, but a lot of the traffic issues and indeed cycling issues end up in my ward, where there's more cyclists, more cars, more prams, more schoolgoers. They all end up in the Plymouth Ward at the end of the day, and we have to do that. And we've not been asked for our views on this at all. I know, Chairman, in the report on page 87 that the economic development section of the council was consulted. No comments were received. Well, my greatest respect, they've had best part of 4 to 5 years to respond. Why have they not come back and said what the economic benefits of the scheme might be? And again, if you turn to page 88 of the report, the council's transport section was consulted. Again, no comments received. Well, that shows if sections, departments of the council can't respond positively to a report creating a railway, a cycling route that is going to cost millions, so we're told, why have they not commented on this? Surely this is a matter of concern to the public. So finally, Chairman, I will end, and I've said enough, but I will end by saying the cost of the scheme. I don't know the cost of this scheme, but I can guarantee that if it were 5 million, it'll end up at being about 8 million. And if it were 8 million, it'd end up at about 15 million at the end of the day. I rest my case, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Councillor Perry, you had your hand up.
Yeah. Are we able to bring the plan of the part in Sully? I just want to take this from Westwick, if that's okay. It's not in our papers. You had to go somewhere else, and I can't bring it up at the moment. Yeah, look. God, look. Actually, the best screen is behind me. Yeah, a bit further west, right as it goes into Sully, where it ends. It would be helpful if we maybe had the drawings in the packs in future, so we can see the detailed drawings rather than having to go into the consultation. And then if we come here, then we'd have them printed out ready for us. So that's the area there, isn't it?
Thornbridge Crossroads on the far right to the photo.
Yeah. So as people travelling west leave the railway path, they have to cross the road. Then they come along, and it's a shared path, and it's great they've got priority over the junction. Then, as I said earlier, there's a potential there for a bicycle street rather than take away the green. And I think people do like green, and it's appreciated. It's a gateway into the village. So, and although Kevin's never heard of a bicycle street, it's a Dutch concept, and the Dutch tend to lead in this sort of thing. So I think the Dutch would probably go for a bicycle street there, and that would be better. And then where's the 20 start now? Because the 20 is a little bit further back, isn't it?
How would the residents get into their street with your newly made up bicycle street suggestion?
Kevin's asking about what a bicycle street is. A bicycle street basically is a residential road with car access like cul-de-sacs, in which people on bicycles take priority, but there is still access for home, so people would still be able to get home.
Which is what I said in the first place. Okay.
But hopefully this will inform Kevin, because it is good to discuss and inform people. So that's how we're not allowed to have discussions in the committee meeting. Sorry. So yeah, my concern is then if you are travelling west, when you do get to the end, then you've got to cross the road again to continue down South Road. So ideally, there'd have been a one-way cycle path on the southern or the eastern side or the southern side of the road, so that you'd only have, or you wouldn't have to keep crossing the road. So that is a bit of a drawback with what's in front of us. Are we able to condition and give approval, but with a slight tweak of the design to actually use that existing road as a bicycle street and therefore not have to pave over that grass verge? If I can maybe get an answer on that now and then come back on the rest of it.
Yeah, okay. I'll ask officers to respond to the comments.
Just on that point, I'm not really making comment on the merit of it, and I'm not saying it isn't always a good idea, but we have to deal with the scheme in front of us. I couldn't commit the applicant to doing something different when that's not part of that proposal. So unfortunately, Councillor Perry, we have to look at what's in front of us tonight.
Liam, you have your hand up. You want to respond to that particular issue?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was something I touched on earlier in the presentation. If you recall the red line plan, so the area that Councillor Perry is referring to isn't actually within the application red line, so it wouldn't ordinarily be something we would control. As I sort of referred to previously, the council is able to undertake work, so that would be a matter of our active travel officer in terms of our highways team terms of implementing.
It would actually be a PD matter, I believe.
Yes,
yeah.
permitted development.
In that case, Councillor Perry, you indicated that you had a few more comments. Can you please make it brief?
Yeah, obviously I've submitted some comments before in regards to the type of surface. I am concerned of the loss of verge along the road as a buffer, and it's not just for errant vehicles, but you are putting young children close to a road, and even at low speeds, a large vehicle is a particular danger and hazard to a young child who might fall from their bicycle and end up on the road, which is why the Dutch put hedges often between the bicycle paths and the roads, and it would never stop a car that came off the road, but it would stop a child falling off the road. So I think in Wales we are a little bit behind. Obviously, I am probably the only member here who's actually lived in the Netherlands, and I've lived in Germany, and have a bit of experience of this, and have actually read the Dutch Crow manual. On regards to lighting, Bug Life recommend a colour temperature of 2,200 Kelvin. I'm not quite sure whether Bat Trust has revised their guidance to 2,700 in the UK, but I think we need to look at the Bug Life. Worcestershire County Council are installing amber and red lighting for bat and wildlife, which would have less of an impact on surrounding properties. Having cycled in the Netherlands, I can tell you what, you need lights on your bicycles in order to see, not just to be seen. We have far too much lighting in Wales. 3,000 Kelvin is too bright. We know it has adverse effects on wildlife. We know it actually can cause problems and generate complaints from neighbours. So we should be looking at 2,200 Kelvin, but actually lighting the path so people can just see the way, but not to floodlight it as we so often do. So I'd be strongly against anything higher than the 1 metre. And I think that's inappropriate. And the lighting shouldn't be to read a book as we have in our streets, but it should just be there to mark the route, the very most subtle lighting. So I am concerned, and we are kind of offering a bit of a blank check on this again as to the exact detail. Overall, I think the route is much better for residents of Sully to reach Penarth and the destinations in Penarth, and I think it's a great route for the people in Penarth to either go for a leisure walk to Sully or to cycle to Sully and potentially on to Barry. There are missing links. It's not ideal. Hopefully I've pointed out some of the shortcomings. I have to vote on this, and I am literally voting on something that is not perfect with shortcomings and is in part a blank check. Yeah, I don't really know how to vote when I'm giving a blank check on something, if I can have a little bit of a thought when other people come in.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Liam, would you like to respond to all the comments that we've heard? Unless you were responded to.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll make an attempt at that. So starting with Councillor Aviat, she asked about people in mobility scooters. Would there be benefits for people using wheelchairs and accessible, etc., accessibility issues? I mean, I think in terms of the scheme, as I mentioned, it's a 4 metre to 3 metre wide path. So we would provide that shared space really for accessibility. So to my mind, that is a good thing. It's going to improve accessibility. You're reducing any conflict with traffic. Noting the comments there about passing highways, but on the path there will be that sort of segregation away from vehicular traffic. Better connectivity as well, sort of and that inclusion, I guess, and I think generally some improvement in terms of health and well-being, the ability to go into the countryside and travel along there as a member of the public. So that was my comments there. Councillor Ernest discussed the consultation and stated he didn't have sight of consultation. I did check the system just now, and we did send emails when the application came in. I think it was in August time. 12th of August, an email was sent to local members, including Councillor Ernest. I'm not sure what's happened there. Matters raised around cost. I mean, it's not for the planning application for us as officers to consider the cost. We must consider the planning merits only. any matters of reopening the railway line aren't before us. This is a matter for an active travel route, so that's not what we're considering. I think that's the general overview. If I've missed anything, please come back. I think there was reference there to traffic lights as well, and concerns there about crossing the road, etc. Councillor Perry then, loss of verge as a buffer in terms of the impact there on the start of the route. As I mentioned earlier, that is outside of the application boundary. Note the concerns, but we have to consider the application before us. And then in terms of lighting, that has been considered. If you go to your matters arising and turn to, it's not numbered on the page, but we have considered that matter in terms of whether the temperature could be reduced to 2,200 kelvins as opposed to the 2,700 proposed. This was noted within the ecological impact assessment. It didn't have any objection from the council's ecologist. We did seek further clarification from leading ecologist at Arcadis, who are the applicants, and confirmed that the lighting design is in line with guidance in terms of being a warm white colour of 2,700 Kelvin, which is away from the blue spectrum that bats typically avoid. So noting that, we do have a condition in the pack as well around the sort of lighting being turned off between the hours of 12 and 5 in the morning, so to assist them reducing impacts on light sensitive species. So that, as well as the sort of the height of the light, and then being sort of 1 metre bollard type lighting as opposed to anything higher. Thank you, Chair. If there's anything else, I'm happy to come back.
Thank you, Liam. Before we move, I remember similar arguments from some of the ones that we've heard relating to the other part of the old railway track that leads into Penarth back in 2012-13, when it was a matter of huge controversy. It is now hugely appreciated, very, very popular, very well used, and would extend. This path would extend into that. I've got a few people with their hands up to speak, starting off with Councillor Wilson.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I like to move officers' recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Hodges, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We sometimes, a planning committee, have the ability to worry a scheme to death, and I'm seeing a lot of that tonight. This is not a new concept. It's not a new idea. Many of us went on the site visit to see a scheme that's going to create 570 odd houses in the area, and we were shown. We walked over the railway line as was, and we looked at it and we were told this is going to be part of this active travel scheme if everything goes ahead with the housing scheme, which it has. So there's no real news there. We heard concerns about the cost. Well, and then, but let's stick a bridge in. Well, that'll cost a few bob. That's a bit strange. And the concern about the final loss of a proposed make-believe railway line that can be reinstated there. Well, certain parties never agreed to Wales getting £4 billion for our railways. Perhaps if they had, we might be having the money to do things like that. In the meantime, we're having an active travel, bike and pedestrian scheme put in to what will be a low-cost housing scheme, and will connect up Cosmiston to Penarth and Cosmiston to Sully and Barry. Yes, there is. This will be better.
Not accessible.
There we go. What can I say? Is the scheme everything I want it to be? No, because life isn't like that. I think it's a very good scheme. I'm sure as it progresses and as issues come up about kinks in roads or whatever, they will be gently addressed and sorted out. So I'll happily second the recommendation for granting this application.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Councillor Williams, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to all the discussion and I appreciate some of the concerns, but they've all been considered. I was going to firstly move it, but obviously the speakers are ahead of me, so happy to second, but then Councillor Hodges on it. Just a point of order. I've been a member that's lived on the continent, so I do know what the improvements can make to a society. And I think this is one of those that will do that and provide the benefit. So I'm happy to support.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Perry, you had your hand shoot up at one point over a point that was made.
Yeah, if I can.
If you can be brief.
Very
please.
brief. Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned with our ecologist department if they don't seem to understand light pollution, and turning the lights off between 12 midnight and 5 a.m. doesn't solve the problem, because most of our nocturnal animals, which most animals are in fact, go out at dusk and dawn. So then you've actually got the street lighting on when these animals are actually active.
Councillor Perry.
The other point.
Councillor Perry, if they're out at dusk and dawn, they're crepuscular, not nocturnal.
Well, there you go, but never mind. I won't be able to pronounce that word. So I am concerned we're not getting the best advice on this, which is why Worcestershire County Council have gone red and amber. And I think we need to look at this, and the advice I think that we've had from officers is very suspect.
Thank you, Councillor Perry.
And then the other question I've got is that I keep being told about the scope. So which part of the route that we've seen is in the planning application and which isn't? Because that just keeps coming in, because I thought it was all in the planning application.
No, the part of it is permitted development, which is the part leading into Surrey. I think Liam perhaps is better placed to explain this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Could we get the slide up again of the application site boundary? That would probably help Councillor Perry in terms of understanding the context of where the site begins and where it ends. Get the first slide up. There we go. So if you see the red colouring on the plan, so the red colouring marks the application site, and that is effectively the area that we are controlling through the planning application. Now in the report we do reference this matter in terms of how part of the plan prior to that red line, which is the bit on South Road Sully, which is the top grey line, how that would be done effectively under permitted development rights. Notwithstanding that, we have considered and presented the whole matter, because it is one application that covers it all. So we've included the parts which are permitted development, notwithstanding what I've just said there. So yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Liam, for your clarification. No.
Why not?
Because you've had the answer to your question.
Yeah,
you can't keep coming back on the same question.
I mean, sorry, but Kevin and I have spoken about a great length about the part that's permitted development anyhow. That might have been made clearer.
You're out of order. I've said no. I think the matter's been moved and seconded. We need to. There is some controversy over this. At least one member has indicated his opposition. Therefore, I feel we should move to the vote.
I'm happy to second that move to the vote.
Yeah. So we are either voting for officers' recommendations or against officers' recommendations.
You can ask for a recorded vote if you want.
Yes, it can be a recorded vote.
You can put this down.
11 people eligible to vote. There are 9 for, 2 against.
It's 10 now.
Oh, 10 for, 2 against. There's 12. Sorry, I was looking at votes cast, not votes eligible. There's one more allowed, according to this.
Put it on the screen. What was that? Can I just confirm that everyone has voted that should be able to vote? If you haven't, can you just please indicate you've had problems?
It says 24 present, but it isn't. Which one?
It'll be online as well, Chair.
Who's it?
There's no one come up, Chair, for us.
Is it
So it
13
should be
or not?
12.
It's probably might be Wendy. Yes. Problems. Oh no, there we go. 13. Yeah, we've got it. Yeah, all the votes are in now. Thank you.
Please bring up the recorded bit, Chair.
Yeah.
We need to bring up the recorded
Yes,
part. We'll
please.
bring up the names now. Bear with us.
There we go. 11 for, 2 against. So that is clearly carried. We can move on. So moving on to the final application of today, and that's the application, where's the numbers? 2025/00597/ Christchurch Presbyterian Barry. We have late reps on this, including comments from a member of the committee, Councillor Johnson, who isn't with us today. So, I believe, presenting. Liam, again, I think this is you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll present this one. If we can get the slides as well, there's a few images I can show. So this application seeks planning permission for the change of use of Christchurch Presbyterian on T Newydd Road in Barry. The proposal relates to a mixed-use development comprising of retail and restaurant uses with staff accommodation provided in a detached building to the rear. First floor rear extension and various internal and external alterations are also proposed and set out in your report. So in terms of the retail and restaurant, so I'll come on to that shortly. No representations have been received as part of the planning application from members of the public, albeit concerns were raised about the scheme in representations to a previous application in 2024. In terms of why it's on your agenda today, the application was required to be determined by committee, called in by Councillor Johnson, relating to the reason of it being a change of use of a historic Barry building in a central location, and for committee to be appraised of the implications of this on the town centre and surrounding area. And as the chair has just indicated, Councillor Johnson has written in since production of the report and the matters arising is noted there. Councillor Johnson doesn't raise any objections. You can see the commentary in that submission. So in terms of the application itself, as you can see, the site area is marked out there on your red line plan with the church and the hall area to the rear, just in the central area of Barry with the library opposite. If we move on to the next plan or the next image, this shows us the building in question. As you can see, it's got nice architectural detail in. It isn't listed, but it does have that nice architectural detail in that central location. Come on to the next slide. We just cycle through some of the images. You see a closer up image there. These photos were taken relatively recently. And the next slide as well. So there you've got the existing layout plan. So you've got the church hall, the area, various rooms, and then there's some existing residents at the back. You move on to the next slide. We've got the proposed plans. So you can see an entranceway into a foyer area, and then a shop area on the ground floor with some storage at the back, and then some staff residents at the back. And then the second plan then will show the upper floor, which is on the next slide, and you've got the restaurant area and your kitchen there at the back. So that's the general context. If we go cycle through the rest of the plans as well, we see the elevations. So the elevation treatment there with the new glazed shop front on the front. And then that's the rear elevation, the side elevation with the extension at the back, which you can see on the right hand side. And then there's a fire exit escape then on the side elevation as well, serving the upper floor restaurant. If you go to the next slide, I think we're just coming to the end then. So then you've got the opposite side there with the extension on the back. So in terms of the principle of development, the site is located adjacent to the Barry Houghton Road District Centre. The proposed uses in terms of retail and restaurant uses are considered appropriate in this what is a sustainable central location and will contribute positively to the town centre vitality. In terms of design and visual impact, you see from the images there, the extension is sort of sympathetic to the original building and the alterations as well, including the shopfront glazing and ramped access with improved accessibility at the front. Materials there, including slate, render, aluminium, are all appropriate in the context. In terms of heritage, as I mentioned, the building isn't listed. It is historic, but not listed. The council's heritage officer has raised no objection, and no harm is identified to nearby listed buildings, including the Barry Library opposite. Conditions are recommended to secure appropriate boundary treatments set out in the report. In terms of neighbouring amenity, the SRS team have raised no objection. You'll see that in your matters arising report, where they come in with condition suggestion, which officers have amended the initial condition drafted to include the recommendation in terms of background noise levels and the impact of plant and machinery in this context in terms of serving particularly the restaurant use. In terms of highways and parking, the Highway Authority does note the deficit of 11 spaces in terms of the use proposed, but also raises no objection because it is a central location and availability of nearby public car parks. Delivery management plan is recommended. In terms of ecology, a bat survey was submitted, found no evidence of roosts, and the council's ecologist recommends installation of bat and bird boxes and appropriate contractor awareness measures in this instance. No other issues raised by any statutory consultees, and in conclusion, officers consider the application to be acceptable on its planning merits and is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions in your report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Liam. Right, we can open up to discussion. I've got a number of hands up already. Wendy, you did have your hand up, Wendy Gilligan, but you've taken it down. Does that mean you don't want to speak, or are we having problems? Councillor Gilligan?
I was having problems, but okay. I don't want to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. In that case, Councillor Hodges, you were first.
Thank you, Chairman. It's nice to see this in front of committee at last. I think it's important that it's come to committee because I think it's important that committee members see old buildings, the use and reuse of old buildings, and the sympathetic changes that can be made, especially to old churches and chapels. And we've had quite a number of them over the years in Barry, and I would always prefer an active reuse of an old historic, yet not perhaps recognised as an important building, but as a significant building in Barry, rather than taking them down and building something modern, because I have issues with some modern building practices as being used in this town. Just go along for the millennium sometime and you'll see what I mean. But when it comes to this, I'm glad to see it. It's been actively looked at by our planning officers. They've taken the right amount of time with it, and they've come forward with a scheme that I think is perfectly acceptable and in fact is welcome. I would like to see more restaurants in our town centre. I want to see this building actively reused, and I think they will have a significant part to play in the modernisation of the centre of our town, which needs desperately to be done. So I'm more than happy to move the officer's recommendation with the conditions contained in. I certainly know the local member on the committee, Councillor Johnson, is a fan of this because it retains a building, and he looks forward as well to the positive aspects that will come from this scheme. So happy to move, Chair.
Pardon me. Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Councillor Wilson, you're next.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a statement as well. I mean, I totally support what Councillor Hodges has just said. I think this is a good development. I kind of regret what has happened in Penarth. There were two churches in Penarth, no longer there in the centre of Penarth. One of them was on Stanwell Road, which is no longer there. It's now replaced by modern buildings, which I don't think have got much architectural merit whatsoever. And one is on Hitman Road and still not being developed. And it's been there for quite a considerable period of time. And clearly, I feel this is a good repurpose of a building. And I'm hoping it will act as a catalyst for further developments nearby. And certainly there is potential for other buildings, not too dissimilar to this, to be developed very near. And equally, I think a nighttime economy in that particular area is appropriate. I think clearly the King Square area needs it, very much so, and I welcome it, and I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Payne, you have your hand up. You've been very patient.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I also second this development, and anything that revitalises the town centre for me as a Barry girl is brilliant, because I have used this building as a young person in terms of buying books, having cups of tea. I've done car boot sales there. I've run a youth club there. So I know the building really, really well. So I am delighted that it's going to be revitalised, it's going to be upgraded, but most of all, it's going to be used. So I wholeheartedly second this recommendation, and it's brilliant that we've got something good going on in the town centre. So thank you for that. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. I see no other hands up. I have heard no comments opposing this. Officer's recommendations have been moved and seconded or thirded as well. And as I say, I've heard no comments against, so I take that as approval. That matter's been approved. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your attendance and have a good evening.